This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Eben Janssen. The show is live. It's broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We are also streaming live on YouTube right now, where the whole show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Today we're live at the Goodwood Magistrates Court, where the alleged Sensory City serial killer will appear. It's also World Tuberculosis Day, and we'll look at our response to the disease here in South Africa. We also look at the controversy surrounding the Reed dance. We get an update from Human Rights Watch in London after Human Rights Day, and we close by looking at lightning and the recent spate of deaths we've seen in this country. Also, I'll keep you updated on the crucial Cricket World Cup semi-final in Auckland. That's on right now. But first, let's get the day's news from Anindo Mal.
Good morning, I'm Anindo Mal. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. As part of World TB Day today, government will be strengthening the fight against tuberculosis, focusing on miners and mining communities. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and Minister of Health Aaron Motsoaledi will launch a national TB screening campaign in the northwest. Meanwhile, Archbishop Desmond Tutu has also called for the fight against tuberculosis to be intensified. South Africa is said to have the third highest number of TB cases in the world, and Tutu himself is a tuberculosis survivor.
We need to act decisively. We need to act collectively. We need to act now. Please. This ought to be our next liberation struggle.
The Thohoyandou Magistrates Court in Limpopo is expected to receive a report on the mental status of a student allegedly linked to 4 murders. The 24-year-old man allegedly murdered 4 women, including 2 young girls, on and off the campus of the University of Venda last year. Meanwhile, the alleged Sensory City killer will also be back in the Goodwood Magistrates Court in Cape Town this morning. The 30-year-old man is suspected of the serial murders of 6 women. Social worker Arena Smith is expected back in the dock in the investigation of sentence of convicted killer Thandi Maqobela. State prosecutor Bonnie Curry Kamwe is expected to continue a cross-examine of the social worker in the High Court in Cape Town. Maqobela was convicted of murdering her husband, acting Judge Patrick Maqobela, in 2009. She was also found guilty of fraud and forgery. While women and men against child abuse have welcomed the rape conviction of the ex-Grand Slam tennis champion Bob Hewitt, one of Hewitt's victims says she has forgiven the former tennis champion for raping her. Yesterday, the 75-year-old was found guilty of raping 2 of his tennis students and sexually assaulting a 3rd in the 1980s.
Victory is a hard word to use, because I don't think that it's a game that we've been playing. So, I just hope that this gives hope to other victims and survivors out there.
As Nigeria heads into elections on Saturday, the United Nations and the White House have urged a process that is free, transparent and credible. Observers are predicting a tight race between incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan and opposition leader Muhammadu Buhari.
All Nigerians must be able to cast their votes without intimidation or fear. So I call on all leaders and candidates to make it clear to their supporters that violence has no place in democratic elections, and that they will not incite, support, or engage in any kind of violence before, during, or after the votes are counted.
And in cricket, I'll hand over straight to Eben, who will give you the latest available score there.
Yeah, thanks very much, Janine. It's been a tough one for South Africa. Rain again intervened in a World Cup semi-final. Well, it's almost like the curse of the World Cup final. Of course, Proteas finally managed to score 281, adjusted to 298 needed of 43 overs. I can tell you New Zealand have made a scintillating start. They're on 77 for the loss of 1 wicket. The danger man, though, Brendan McCullum, well, he's out for a blistering 59 of only 26 deliveries, smashing all the South African bowlers all over the park, really. So 77 for 1 after 8. New Zealand well on top, but there's a lot of cricket left in this match. Now, top story. The alleged Sensory City serial killer and rapist He'll be back in the court today. The suspect was arrested in January after 6 naked bodies were discovered lying face down with their hands tied behind their backs in a field next to the Century City train station in Cape Town. Now, to give us the latest, we are joined from Cape Town by our reporter, Vanessa Puna. Very good morning to you, Vanessa.
Good morning to you, Eben.
Vanessa, this morning the suspect will be appearing there. Just tell us, are there any community or family members of victims that you've seen attending proceedings?
Yeah, but no, there's no sign of any community members or even families of the victims here at the Goodwood Magistrates Court this morning. I have with me a guest who is the Deputy Chairperson of the Kensington Policing Community Forum, who will speak to us about just the feeling of the Kensington community at this stage. I can, however, Eben, confirm with you that as early as this morning, police in the Western Cape have confirmed that the suspect, the 30-year-old suspect who initially was charged with 2 charges of murder, rape and robbery, will now also today be charged with 5 further charges. That is 2 of murder as well as 1 of rape and 1 of kidnapping. Now, to speak to us about just the general sense from the community is Mr. Muhammad Noordin, who is the Deputy Chairperson of the Kensington Community Policing Forum. Good morning to you, Mr. Noordin. Just in terms of the feeling of the Kensington community and surrounds following the discoveries of the bodies there late last year.
Good morning, Vanessa, and good morning to the viewers. Yes, it came to great concern to the community of Kensington, as Kensington is not known, for very, severe violence and this type of killing fields. So it was a concern. The people were up in arms, but we're having a great and very vibrant CPF, working very close to the police, and we could take things under control where the community is concerned, as neighborhood watches were formed, street committees were formed, and they could assist then, of calming the people, putting things in perspective with the crime, and the Century City, or 12th Avenue as a route to go to Century City.
Now, you spoke to me earlier about the measures that have been put in place by various street committees, etc. Can you just elaborate on this and also tell us if it's going ahead and what are the long-term plans?
Yes, Vanessa. Acre Road Street Committee has been formed immediately after the killings in December. And they do patrolling in the evenings during people going through to coming from Century City home, and in the mornings as well. They are still going on, and they are reaping in great successes because, there were a few attempted robberies. So in the presence, because they were very violent, they were in the area, it was stopped immediately. So that has brought, great successes, in that area.
And then also you spoke about the communication and the cooperation between the community as well as the police. This is ongoing.
This is going on, and it brought in, like I said, great successes. Kensington Street Committee has been formed. There's Franklinton North Neighborhood Watch has been formed. Another one is being formed now in 10th Avenue. So yes, this is, what the people want. And as I make just reference, to the apartheid system that we had, during that time we had one common enemy, and that was the apartheid regime. Today we also have another common enemy, and that is crime. And people should really, form street committees in the area because it was successful at that time prior to 1994. So it can be successful again now.
Thank you very much. That's Mr. Noordin, Deputy Chairperson of the Kensington Community Policing Forum, speaking to us about the fears and the feelings of the Kensington community following the discoveries of those bodies as late as December last year. Very important to note, though, Eben, if I can just say, this morning speaking to police, they will still not be roped in on speculation that this is indeed the work of a serial killer. At this point, the police say the matter is before the courts, but could confirm that the additional 5 charges, including 2 of murder, will be brought against the suspect when he appears in court this morning.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Now, coincidentally, the suspected University of Venda serial killer, who's been linked to 4 murders, rape and an assault, will also appear in the Thohoyandou Magistrates Court in Limpopo this morning. The 24-year-old student has been charged on 16 counts. That's 4 of murder, 1 of attempted murder, 5 of rape, 3 of aggravated robbery, and 3 further charges of kidnapping around the tertiary institution. Now, joining us today to shed some light on the workings of South African serial killers is Brigadier Gerard Labuskaghni, who's the head of the police's investigative psychology section. Very good morning to you, Brigadier. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Coincidentally, we have 2 serial killers in court, or suspected serial killers before the courts today. We sometimes seem to think that this kind of thing only happens in the movies that come out of America. But it's a very real scenario that plays out in South Africa now. Are we seeing a spike in this? Can you maybe just paint the sort of background to these kind of serial killers that we see in South Africa?
Yeah, thanks, Eben. We probably, on average, in a year would identify 5 new murder series. And that's primarily thanks nowadays to our DNA database that we have, which automatically links cases where similar DNA is found. So that's really led to a spike in our identification of murder, but more specifically serial rape series. But again, that does not mean there's more happening. It's just our abilities to identify them are far more improved thanks to technology such as DNA, and also the training that we give to detectives and crime scene people on how to identify these cases by means of modus operandi.
These 2 cases before the court, the one in Cape Town, the police are still not prepared to say that it is a serial killer. You work with the psychology section within the police. From your experience, how do you view the kind of modus operandi that we've seen, specifically with the Century City killings, hands tied behind the backs, shallow graves, naked bodies and so forth?
Well, what we often see in our serial murders, and that's also throughout the world, is that they like to group their crime scenes in a particular area. So they'll often meet their victims in one particular area and then transport them usually by foot to another area that they've pre-sought out beforehand, where they will actually kill the victims. So you often do find almost like a graveyard of victims. Strangulations are usually the most common method, and are interesting in Cape Town. They seem to prefer using ligatures to tie up victims, so it's quite interesting.
We have the stereotypes that I suppose is born out of the movies, that serial killers are normally middle-aged white males with an axe to grind against the world. That's not the case, is it?
Yeah, a lot of our understanding of serial murder is based on research that's done in the United States. So, of course, that's not going to be applicable in South Africa and China. So, according to our population demographics, our serial murderers, in terms of their race, fits very much the demographic profile of the country. But they're not the evil geniuses that you see on TV. They make mistakes not because they want to be caught, but because they often don't understand forensic techniques that are available to the police. So they have an average level of intelligence. Usually 60% of them are actually involved in romantic relationships, so they're not these isolated loners that people often get this misperception from television, etc.
The Jeffrey Dahmer picture that we always get. I want to talk about the community. We've seen how the Kensington Community Police Forum talk about the effect that it's had on the community. In general, when 6 bodies are discovered in your community, what's the kind of psychological effect that it has on that community?
It has almost an overwhelming effect on the community because nobody knows who the person could be. And typically serial murderers are people who really just fit into society quite normally. They don't live a criminal lifestyle. It would be very easy if they were robbing, stealing, housebreaking, etc., and committing murders. But these are people who react with you very normally. They interact, they're in relationships, they have jobs. They're not living that criminal lifestyle. So that's why I think also there's this compounded fear that it could be literally your neighbor and you wouldn't know it.
Now, you believe that South African serial killers operate somewhat differently from those in the rest of the world. How and why is that?
I think the primary reason is actually socioeconomic. Most of our serial murderers are doing odd jobs or piece jobs. They're not full-time employed, which means they don't have a vehicle. Now they have to alter their modus operandi. They cannot pick up a victim with a vehicle, lure them take them to a different place, kill them, and drop their bodies off somewhere else. So they have to approach their victims on foot. Now, how do you convince someone to come with you to the place where you want to murder them? You have to sell them a story. Yeah. And usually that's going to be offering employment. And because on the other side of it, we have so many unemployed people, they're desperate for jobs. So 1 in 9, 1 in 10 women will probably go with a complete stranger if that job offer sounds very believable and lucrative. And they will literally, from that point, walk with that stranger, usually take a shortcut through the veldt where they commit their murders.
What are some of the other myths or myth-busting demographics about serial murderers and their victims here in South Africa?
Well, as I said, this myth that they are these sort of isolated loners. As I said, 60% are in romantic relationships, have children often. They have an average level of intelligence based on the ones that we've tested. As I said, they're not driving around. They're not necessarily even these flashy, convincible people. They just are able to sell a story to desperate victims that will then go with them.
Will you ever be able, as an individual, to see telltale signs if someone close to you is a serial killer or potential?
You know, in the past they used to talk about the McDonald triad, which is fire setting, bedwetting, and cruelty to animals. And if you see that pattern of behavior, you're going to have someone develop into a serial murderer. Unfortunately, there's not been a proper link between that. Of course, if you do have that in any child, that's a warning, concerning sign on its own, but that isn't the pathway to leading to become a serial murderer. So I don't think we'll ever really be able to predict who's going to become one, and we won't ever, based on personality or interaction, really just discern if a person is a serial murderer or is going to become one at a later stage.
Brigadier, I thank you for coming in today. I know it's a difficult subject for you guys to talk about and to give us insight, because all these investigations are constantly ongoing. So thank you for coming in today and shedding some light on something that's very concerning for all of us here in South Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. That's Brigadier Gerard Labuschagne, who's the head of the police's investigative psychology unit. He's giving us a little insight into how serial killers operate in this country and the fact that, well, they're well different than those in the rest of the world. But let's have a look at what are the stories that you're talking about on Twitter this morning. Jen Russ says, the pride felt seeing my family listed on the Wimbledon trophy had been replaced by shame. We're talking about, of course, the conviction yesterday of tennis superstar Bob Hewitt. Bright Spark Ian says, let me just say how happy I am with the outcome in the Bob Hewitt case. Justice being done. John Bushell says, Bob Hewitt, huge victory for rape victims all over the world. Bob Hewitt found guilty, 2 counts of rape, 1 of sexual assault. Those are the views, of course, of you at home around this case. That's had a lot of interest here in South Africa. Let's take a look at the tweet of the day now. This one comes from South Africa's Minister of Sport, that is Vigile Mbalula, Minister Razmataz. Rain is a sign of good things to come. We are on it. AB will steer the side to victory. Talking about Protea fire, well, Mr. Minister, we are under the pump. I can tell you that South Africa, well, we've picked up another wicket. That was Morne Morkel. He got rid of Kane Williamson. But New Zealand are still rollicking along at more than 9 runs and over. They are 94 for 2 now in the 11th over. It looks like it's going to be a very, very closely contested match there. And I'll keep you updated as things develop throughout the day. But let's take a look now at other news from around the world. That is, in China, the South China Morning Post. Singapore yesterday mourned the passing of its legendary son, whose name has been for so long interchangeable with its own, Lee Kuan Yew, as tributes poured in from world leaders remembering him as a visionary, a strategic thinker and a statesman. Then down under in Australia, the Australian reports the country's largest union has agreed to slash weekend penalty rates for the retail sector in a breakthrough deal in South Australia that could affect up to 40,000 workers and be replicated across the nation. Moving to the United Kingdom, the Times there. David Cameron kicked off a Conservative leadership race yesterday, ruling out a 3rd term in Downing Street and naming potential successors for the job. That's very interesting. But let's take a look now at what's happening here in South Africa, across the country today. Let's start in Johannesburg, where President Jacob Zuma will speak at the South African Local Government Association National Members Assembly. Move to Durban, where the KwaZulu-Natal Health MEC Longeniseni Dlomo commemorates World TB Day at the Nkusana Sports Ground. Also in Parliament, the Portfolio Committee on Police are currently hosting a National Firearms Summit in the Good Hope Chamber. That should be an interesting discussion. However, time for us to take a break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
It's me, your Minister of Parties and Recreation. There's a serious thing happening in our country. Non-participation. No one is dancing with Mulungu because he doesn't have rhythm. That is why we must make party South Africa's 12th official language to unite us under one language that we all understand. Party! From now on, participation for the nation.
Help make party South Africa's 12th official language. Sign the petition today.
This week we are taking you around the continent, telling you stories about what makes Africa, Africa.
We now head to the Kenyan coast, where we meet a man using needles to fight a growing drug culture. A recent study revealed that there are 850 drug addicts in Diani alone, with over 220 using injectable drugs such as heroin.
In my community, I've seen a lot of these people suffer.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back. Today is World Tuberculosis Day, an opportunity for the world to focus more attention on one of the top health challenges that affects more than 2 billion people around the world. It's estimated that there were 13 million TB cases in 2013, with 9 million of these being brand new cases. But the reality is that many of these cases may go undiagnosed or mistreated, resulting in the continuous spread of the illness if not addressed. Now, last week we spoke to Dr. Jennifer Hughes, a drug-resistant TB specialist from Doctors Without Borders, who's been working with DRTB patients in Khayelitsha for the past 7 years. Now, I'm joined in Cape Town this morning with one of her patients, Goodman Makanda, as well as DRTB counsellor and a former patient, Busisiwe Beko. A very good morning to you guys. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. Good morning.
Now, Goodman, it's World TB Day today. You've battled for the last 2 years with DRTB. Tell us about your journey and how this has affected your life.
Good morning to South Africa. As you said, I'm Goodman Makanda from Khayelitsha. I have XDR TB. It started in 2013. With the MDR. At January in 2014, the results came back as a XDR. It's when I was realized my life was ending. I was waiting for the day to die, but for the help of MSF and Busi next to me, they give me a hope as today I've been converted from positive to negative.
That's fantastic news. Now, Busisiwe, both you and your daughter suffered with the illness. Just tell us briefly about your experience with drug-resistant TB and how this program in Khayelitsha helped you guys.
Okay, with me, my story, it started in 2005 when I was diagnosed, me together with my baby, when she was 5 months old by then. It really affected me because by then there was no decentralization, meaning which like the patients which are diagnosed with the drug-resistant TB were forced to go to hospital. Lucky enough now with the help of MSF in Khayelitsha, because they came up with a decentralization, because there was a challenge of shortage of beds, because I was also one of those patients who was waiting, dying to get in a hospital with no treatment. Lucky enough for the patients like Goodman, they've started their treatment at the clinic. So I would wish like it was happening to all of South Africa, that like the patients whom are diagnosed at the clinic levels, the one whom are able to go to the clinic every day could start the treatment at the clinic so that they can reduce the risk of infecting the others while they are still waiting for the treatment to be started in hospital.
Now, Busisiwe, you've stepped in and you help to counsel patients or people that are battling with the disease now. Tell us, what kind of support do you give them?
I give them the support, like, because if I compare with my case whereby there was no counseling at all, and now they've got a counseling whereby they can know about their disease and what they must expect around their treatment journey, meaning which like the side effects and how to practice the infection control and the challenges they may face, because really there are challenges. The duration of the treatment is long and the treatment is having side effects and there is a lot of pills. So I'm helping them. I'm also facilitating with the support groups whereby like building the relationship among the patients, whereby, as Goodman has mentioned, that the minute you are diagnosed with a drug-resistant TB, you lose hope, and it seems as if it's happening only on you. So when I introduce them to the support group, it's whereby they meet and share and try to comfort each other.
Goodman, tell us about the treatment that you received. How many injections and how many pills do you need to take every day? It must be quite difficult.
It's really difficult. It's only you must have a hope of maybe one day you will get cured and you will be free. The tablets are 20. The injection is for 6 months. So you get it from Monday to Friday for 6 months. Also, the medication, the tablets you're taking in, it gives you some side effects of you lose a lot of weight because you're going to lose your appetite. You're feeling noisier and dizzy until the body tries to absorb and understand what kind of medication you are on. And then after that, it's when everything is back to normal. As you can see now, I'm gaining weight. If you can see, you won't say I have a XDR TB. I'm looking like normal, walking in the street like everybody.
And how has drug-resistant TB affected your family life and your job life?
That it was a shock of the life because I don't have a history of a TB person at home. We don't have a history of a TB. But what was also said is I'm the first person to have a TB at home, and it was the first time to have a TB, but unfortunately I contracted MDR TB. About the case of the job, yes, it's really affect me because I was booked for 3 months at home without working because they said I'm dangerous in a community.
Yeah, that's very difficult. But you see, what's your message to people who are suffering with this illness? What do you say to them? Advice?
My advice is, yes, now we know that the treatment is not that effective, but if they could stay and adhere to the treatment, because this is the only drugs we are having at the moment. So if they could just stay on treatment, and whatever problems they are having, they must just come forward with them, like to their doctors or their counselors or their clinic nurses, so that we can try and bring some sort of help to those patients. But at the end of the day, it needs the commitment and even the community at large to come out and speak with drug-resistant TB, so that we can break the stigma, so that it can be something which really we can talk about it.
Oh, thank you for joining us today. You're doing a sterling job in the community. That is Busisiwe Beko, who is a former DRTB sufferer. She works as a counsellor now, and she was joined by Goodwin Makanda, who is at the moment one of her patients. It's World TB Day today. How can you contribute to us coming to terms and dealing with this disease that is so very difficult to treat now? Let's have a look at your tweets. What are you talking about? Of course, it's TB Day. Olifant says TB can be cured. World TB Day. Take your medication properly, says Olifant. Proudly SA, childhood TB will also receive special attention, especially among children attending early childhood development centres. He talks about World TB Day. NZ Veterinary Association, today is World TB Day. Tuberculosis is a global problem affecting 9 million people worldwide in 2013, who are calling on the world to end TB. Man in the Sky says TB is not a disease of the poor. It can affect people of any economic status or clean surroundings. World TB Day. Yes, it is a scourge that could affect us all. Pudge says, did you know in 2013 9 million people fell ill with TB, but tuberculosis is curable and preventable? Yes, that's at the WHO, the World Health Organization, that is. Now, let's move on. It seems as if the debate between culture and human rights has reached a deadlock. Over the years, there's been growing calls for Commission of Gender Equality to ban virginity testing. The annual Reed Dance attracts thousands of maidens from as far as Swaziland and even Botswana here in South Africa. All girls are subjected to undergo a virginity test before they're allowed to participate in the royal dance, something that critics claim is a violation of children's rights to privacy, bodily integrity and even dignity. Last week, maidens and supporters of the practice marched to the KwaZulu-Natal legislature in Pietermaritzburg to hand over a memorandum to the Speaker, Lydia Johnson, vowing to continue virginity testing. Now, from our studios in Durban, we are joined by the organizer of the march, Dr. Nomagugu Ngubane, who is the founder of the Nomgubulwane Culture and Youth Development Organization. A very good morning to you, Doctor. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
It's nice to be with you in this program.
A lot of controversy, but tell us, why do you believe it's important for us to preserve this practice?
It is very important to us to preserve our celebrations of Umkhosi Mhlanga or Reed Dance Festival, because virginity inspection is one of our rite of passage. There is education part of it, and the self-esteem of a girl child, not to minimize the teenage pregnancy. As we are looking at South Africa right now, many young girls are having children, and it's not who we are as Africans. It falls under our culture, our rite of passage, and at the same time, the whole indigenous people in South Africa have their own celebrations, which are cultural, which are religious, and that's why we said we must go to march, because if we sit down and look at the policymakers destroying our identity, destroying our consent as parents, because when they are making policies there and they call them human rights, which are individualistic in their approach, it's not who we are as Africans. We live communally, we share happiness, we share sorrow. I mean, it's how we are. And this will go on because it was here before our new constitution came to power. And our constitution in South Africa is very great, but they are busy imposing things that the society dislike. There is nothing like us. I mean, like indigenous people that we enjoy, like looking at our young girls doing what they are doing. And when we talk about the privacy, what do they mean by privacy? Because when we talk about privacy, even in hospitals, when a child is born, the doctor or the nurse there go for virginity inspection, whether it's a boy or a girl. That is a natural phenomenon. So they must stop imposing things that we are correct according to us.
Now, you handed over a memorandum with your demands in Pietermaritzburg. Yes. Tell us, what were some of the demands that you put in the memorandum?
We said the policymakers must stop interfering with our celebrations, our cultures in South Africa, not even KwaZulu-Natal only. And the second one was why we are not represented when these people are doing when they are doing policies. Because we are here, we don't like them to talk on our behalf.
Now, the ceremony itself, recently there's been a debate as to whether people from other races could also take part in the ceremony. How do you view that other races take part in the Reed Dance ceremony?
I must say it, that in South Africa there is diversity of cultures. All the ethnic groups in South Africa haven't even invited us to their celebrations. So each and every one is enjoying on his or on her own right to have sacred things, where other races as well are doing their own sacred things alone. So it's not a matter of marginalizing other races, but it's a matter of sacredness. And they are doing their own things without even inviting us, because, of course, they must enjoy who they are, you know. So us as Africans, indigenous Africans in this country, they are so biased and prejudiced, those people who are doing policies, because they don't even consult us, and there's nothing to consult us about, because this is our life.
And quickly, how is preparations going for this year's ceremony?
It's great. It will be more than you look at it in previous years. Because the more they talk about it, the more girls are interested. And girls were interviewed lot of times. We were in Sandton 4 weeks ago, and the Women's League was not even there. Why they were not there? Because the girls were there. We have academics, we have all the careers that you may count, and they run away. Why they run away from listening? The freedom of choice. Where is the freedom of choice?
Yes.
The freedom of expression from these girls, because they are not dead. They are there to tell the story that they like. Besides, I have a right as a parent to upbring my child the way I like, without the interference of the people who are still doing the impositions to us as Africans. Now we are saying it must come to a stop. We are talking about collective rights,
yes,
not the individual rights.
Thank you very much for joining us today and giving us your view on this very passionate subject. Thank you very much. That's Dr. Nomagugu Ngubane, who is the founder of the Nomgubulwane Culture and Youth Development Center organization. We're talking about the reed dance and the place that it has in South African society. Now, there you see today's picture of the day. Comes from Craig Morea, who is in New Zealand right now. He says the picture was taken before the match started this morning. Shoo, emotional, great atmosphere during the anthems. Love New Zealand and its people, but let's turn it on, boys. He says, well, at the moment, the score, I can tell you it's 113 for 2 now after 15 in the 16th over. South Africa are fighting hard here, but it looks like it's going to be a very closely run thing. There you have it. Batting at the moment is Martin Guptill and Ross Taylor. It looks like it. Imran Tahir is bowling. Need another wicket, South Africa. It's going to get very tight. But let's take a look at what's on our Facebook page here on Newsroom today. The Cape Chamber of Commerce and Industry says tariff increases are unlikely to save Eskom if it does not tackle costs that appear to be rising out of control. Then, as Nigeria heads into elections this Saturday, the United Nations and the White House have urged a process that is free, transparent and credible, where all citizens are able to cast votes without fear or intimidation. And then you can read more on the UN nuclear watchdog, who has had limited progress in its inquiry into possible military dimensions of Iran's nuclear program, although Iran has cooperated with the agency in implementing an interim deal reached with world powers. All of those stories and a whole lot more on Newsroom Facebook page. Also, our website, sabc.co.za/news. That's where you get all the latest updates. Time for us to take a break. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
Zoom into Africa. This is Comoros. The president is Mr. Ikilulu Dwanine. Comoros got independent from France on 6 July in 1975. The population is over 700,000 people. One of the major languages spoken is French. Monetary unit is the Comoran franc.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. As part of World TB Day today, government will be strengthening the fight against tuberculosis, focusing on miners and mining communities. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and Minister of Health Arun Motsoaledi will launch a national TB screening campaign near Klerksdorp in the northwest today. Meanwhile, Archbishop Desmond Tutu has also called for the fight against tuberculosis to be intensified. South Africa is said to have the third highest number of TB cases in the world, and Tutu himself is a tuberculosis survivor. As Nigeria heads into elections on Saturday, the United Nations and White House have urged a process that is free, transparent and credible. Observers are predicting a tight race between incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan and opposition leader Muhammadu Buhari. And then in cricket, New Zealand are chasing a target of 298 in 43 overs. Evan will hopefully quickly give you the latest available score there.
Yeah, thanks, Anine. It's getting very tight here in the studio. I can tell you all the guys are busy watching cricket. We're not really into our work here this morning. Very nervous, sweaty palms. You can see AB scratching his head. New Zealand, well, they're well on top at the moment. 125 for 2. South Africa is going to need a couple of wickets. Vernon Philander, who's come in, well, he's gone the journey today. 32 runs or 4 and a bit overs. He's been smashed. He's just given away 4 runs. Ross Taylor. Something needs to happen here for the Proteas, or it might be all over in a flash here. So 125, 126 now for 2. Ross Taylor is there on 22 with Martin Guptill. He is on 28. Now, we move on. Last week, 6 Transnet employees died on the N8 near Bloemfontein after being struck by lightning. Now, lightning is caused by the build-up and discharge of electrical energy between positively and negatively charged areas in the atmosphere and clouds. This occurs with every thunderstorm and should be expected as soon as thunderstorms form. Although the chances of being struck by lightning are quite slim, it is still recommended that one takes all the necessary precautions during thunderstorms, more especially when working outdoors or playing golf. Now, in studio with us is Paul Tsietsemonare to tell us more about this natural phenomenon and how to avoid unnecessary injuries during lightning. Good morning, Paul.
Golf?
Yeah, I'm out on the golf course all the time. And you know, up here in Johannesburg, I tell you, the lightning is really scary off late.
Yeah. Oh, even when you're playing soccer, you remember there was some...
the Jomo Cosmos guys. It was Morocco Swallows and Cosmos play. I remember that.
Pretty hectic, yeah.
Now, it's... Lightning strikes is quite common here in South Africa, especially on the high veld. There's lots and lots of it. Is it intensifying? I get the feeling that the storms that we see these days are a little bit more hectic.
Yeah, they actually are. I read somewhere the other day that we are now amongst one of the top lightning receivers, in the world. I mean, especially over the high veld, as well as some parts of Free State going to Lesotho. The high grounds, they get a lot of lightning. Yeah, it looks like it's getting intense, like with many other storms, or with other, heat waves and cold spells and severe rainy weather like we're experiencing right now. I mean, there's already a warning of heavy rainfall along the southwestern part. So it seems like everything climate and weather related is getting worse and worse. Yeah, probably because...
Some of my colleagues here believe that it's because of increased witchcraft activities on the high veld. What do you say about that, Paul?
I've heard that a lot as well. When I was busy writing my script as well, and we're talking about the weather with the guys, and I said, man, why are you trying to predict these things? Because it's somebody send it to somebody, It's like when they send you a letter bomb, they do the same with lightning. And I thought, no, come on, let's forget witchcraft and bully and whatever you might want to call it. This is a natural phenomenon. It happens naturally. Like it says, when negatively and sort of positive charge areas in the clouds, that's exactly how, a lightning sort of develops. So I don't know if the people who perform witchcraft have got, electronic powers or electrical powers that can actually start charging these neutrons and protons.
You are mischievous, man. You are full of mischief, Paul Manari. Now, let's get serious. Let's talk about what are the chances of a house, and if you're inside of the house, an individual getting hurt when lightning is quite hectic around your house.
Yeah. Well, look at it this way. Lightning, the saying, lightning doesn't strike the same place twice. It actually does, but the chances of that happening, the chances of you even walking down the street being struck by lightning is really, it's 1 in 350,000. It's really slim, but when it happens, you're going to feel like 1 in 350,000 electrical volts have just gone through your body. But yeah, it's really, really slim. And if you're indoors, especially, I mean, those are almost zero because, the lightning is attracted by your, your body heat as well as, where you are standing and so forth, So when you're inside a house or inside a car, the chances are still there, but they is super, super slim. So you are more safe when you're indoors and when you're away from, erect structures like a pole or a tree or golf course with little flags.
Yes.
Yeah. So
now listen. There's lots of different advice that we get from the Peanut Gallery about what to do when lightning is out. Where do you hide? People say don't stand under a tree because the tree is going to get struck. Others say go stand in the middle of an open space. What do you say, Paul? Give us advice because I don't know what to do.
Well, look, if you're in the middle of an open space, then you are the only erect point there, which is or the most standing up, straight up person. So you are likely to get struck by lightning there, especially if you are running or if you're conducting a lot of heat. But trees as well, yes, they are attracted because also they're quite tall structures. I mean, Empire State Building was once struck about 15 times in 20 minutes at some point when a storm was really, really severe. So, I mean, because it's so tall and it's metal, so it's a good receiver, a good conductor of electricity. So, yeah, I would say, rather be inside a house, maybe not a 4-story house, but yeah, inside a house. And when a house is struck by lightning, it does not necessarily mean you are going to get charged as well. So inside a house, you are much safer. And, one of these good shoes with the rubber
soles?
Yeah, there's a certain church I don't want to mention. They've got like nice tire-like shoes.
the white shoes with the rubber.
I think Megrob Lebo is in that church as well, so they should help you out.
But I'm sure if you're in that church, then you will get hit by lightning anyhow.
No, you would. Just like when you're in a car, because the car's got the rubber tires, so you're kind of safe. Yeah.
I want to quickly talk about Cyclone Pam because it seems as if every week we've got issues with weather phenomenon around the world. Vanuatu, these cyclones, is that just normal fare that we see going, or is it increased again?
Basically, yes. I must tell you, I wasn't really tracking Cyclone Pam that much because I thought, okay, it's not a common system coming in. It's a little bit severe. What I was checking out was the cut-off low we're having in South Africa at the moment. I'm sure you've noticed we've had a lot of rains for some places, even here for us in Gauteng. I mean, Saturday night and even Sunday night we had some rain. Yeah, there's a bit of a cut-off low, so just like a mini little storm coming in, also bringing rainy weather, especially towards the Western Cape province. So it's been raining quite hectically. But yeah, what we've noticed as well over New Zealand and Australia, especially with the rain falling in during the games and so forth because of the cyclone that side. So yeah, it is pretty normal. The intensity of it and the severity is not, blown out of proportion. Okay. It's not super hectic at the moment. But yeah, it's the season and it's sort of also changing seasons as well. I'll be more worried if we start having them in the next month or so because we're moving into winter now. So we're expecting more of anticyclones. We're expecting mid-latitude cyclones, which are cold fronts and so forth, coming in from the southwestern parts.
Paul, I know you're a cricket follower. We've just had a wicket there. We had a run out. New Zealand are now 133 for 3 after 18 overs. It's still not great, but we are picking up wickets, which is important. New Zealand now need 160 odd of 25 overs to win this game. What's your feeling?
I think that's what we should go. I don't think we should really defend in a sense of getting maidens and bowling them, slow. I think we should get the wickets out quickly, as quick as possible.
Like Pakistan tried to do against, go for the head there. They're bringing Dale Steyn back now. So Dale Steyn is coming back. You see, let's hope Dale Steyn can pick up a couple of wickets as we wrap up proceedings. New Zealand 133 for 3. Dale Steyn went the journey earlier. He was smashed by Brendan McCullum. 39 runs of 3 overs. I've never seen anyone do that to Steyn. Let's hope that he can make a comeback and do the business for South Africa. New Zealand need 6.6 runs and over. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with the rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following day. It's streaming live on YouTube at that time with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. Myself and Paul, we love it in the morning.
All day, every day.